charged in the brutal murder of Kada Scott will head to trial. A judge holding Keon King on all charges, including murder and kidnapping. The 23-year-old woman was found dead on October 18th, buried in a shallow grave behind a vacant middle school in East Germantown.
Have you ever noticed how one ordinary night can quietly turn into the moment that changes everything? The kind of night that doesn't raise alarms right away, doesn't feel dangerous at first, but later becomes a point everyone traces back to. Today on Shadow Crime, we're talking about Kada Scott, a young woman whose life mattered, whose absence still echoes, and whose story just took a major turn in court with new developments involving Keon King. Before we go any further, I need you to pause for a second. If you care about real stories, real victims, and real accountability, like this video, subscribe, and click the bell. It costs nothing, but it helps keep Kada's name alive and makes sure stories like hers don't get buried. This is Shadow Crime, and this is one you need to stay with. Kada Scott was 23 years old. She wasn't a headline. She wasn't a statistic. She was a real person with routines, responsibilities, and plans that stretched beyond the week she disappeared. She worked nights in an assisted living facility in Philadelphia, a job that already says a lot about who she was. Long hours, demanding work, caring for people when most of the city was asleep. Friends describe her as lively, focused, someone who laughed easily but took her responsibilities seriously. She had goals, independence, and that quiet determination people her age carry when they're trying to build something for themselves. But behind the normalcy, there were things that didn't sit right. Phone calls from unknown numbers, a growing sense of unease, the kind of discomfort you brush off because you don't want to believe something bad is forming. And this is where I want you to really sit with this part, because how many times have we all ignored that feeling? Kada didn't vanish in a vacuum. She disappeared from a life that looked familiar, relatable, and safe on the surface. When Kada went missing, the impact was immediate and heavy. Her family didn't wait. They searched, they posted, they pleaded. Friends shared her face everywhere, hoping anyone had seen something. This wasn't just about finding answers. It was about bringing her home. And when the truth began to surface, it was devastating. Kada was found dead, and the focus turned quickly to the people around her, especially one name that would soon dominate the case: Keon King. Keon King wasn't a stranger pulled from thin air. He was someone connected to Kada's circle. Someone familiar enough not to raise instant suspicion. And that's where the tension really starts to tighten, because harm so often comes from proximity, not shadows. As investigators piece together timelines, movements, and digital trails, Keon King was arrested and charged in connection to Kada's death. The community watched closely, waiting for answers, waiting for accountability. Now, here's where the case takes a significant turn. In the most recent court appearance, Keon King was brought back before a judge, and the ruling changed everything. According to court proceedings, the judge found him guilty on all charges. Not partially, not pending, guilty. And as if that wasn't heavy enough, it was also revealed that new video evidence was presented in court. Evidence strong enough to support the prosecution's case and reinforce what Kada's family has been saying all along. This was not an accident, and this was not a mystery without direction. And this is where I want you to pause with me, because this isn't just about a verdict. It's about what it took to get here and what it means moving forward.
The man charged in the brutal murder of Kada Scott will head to trial. A judge holding Keon King on all charges, including murder and kidnapping. The 23-year-old woman was found dead on October 18th, buried in a shallow grave behind a vacant middle school in East Germantown.
Our Kelly Rule was in court today. And Kelly, what are you learning?
Well, Benji, in the Commonwealth's testimony today heavily relied on cell phone evidence and call detail records that they say tied King's phone to the movements of his car and to several key locations connected to Kada's death, including where she worked and where she was last seen the night she disappeared, and to the crime scene. The defense argued, on the other hand, that none of that connected King to Kada's death, but a judge ultimately disagreed. After an emotional 5-hour preliminary hearing, 23-year-old Kada Scott's father and other family members left the courthouse without commenting after a judge ruled that her accused killer, Keon King, will head to trial on all charges. Kada's father, Kevin, wearing a jacket with her name, their attorney speaking on their behalf.
Today was the first day, the first step in accountability and getting justice for Kada Scott.
The prosecution called several witnesses, including 2 homicide detectives, that went into extensive detail on how they linked King's phone number to a Text Me account, a phone app where you can make calls and send messages on Wi-Fi that he was allegedly using to message with Kada in the days leading up to her disappearance and the night she disappeared. They testified how that phone pinged to key locations connected to Kada's death. Kada was reported missing on October 4th, 2025, after arriving at her overnight job, a senior living facility in East Mount Airy, around 10 p.m. A coworker testified today that she saw Kada leaving the building that night on the phone, appearing upset, saying, "I can't believe you called me." Her remains were found in a shallow grave near the former Ada Lewis Middle School after a nearly 2-week search. Detectives played surveillance video at Aubrey Recreation Center today, next to the former Ada Lewis Middle School, the night Kada disappeared and the days following. The prosecution says it shows a black Hyundai Accent parked from the night of October 4th until the early morning hours of October 6th, and a 1999 gold Toyota Camry registered to King come and go from the rec center lot. At one point, early on October 6th, the video shows 2 figures appearing to move something heavy from the Hyundai, then disappearing out of camera view, according to the prosecution. That same day, the gold Toyota Camry and Keon King appear in cameras at the Criminal Justice Center in Center City, where the prosecution says he had to appear in court for an unrelated matter. On October 7th, the prosecution says the black Hyundai Accent was set on fire in an alleyway behind the 2300 block of 74th Avenue, an area detectives also tracked King's phone number to. Now, King's attorney also argued that messages exchanged between King and Kada the night she disappeared showed plans to meet, seemingly for a date. That was his argument. Kada allegedly messaged King saying, "Kidnap me again," to which King replied, "It better be up to." Now, King's attorney would not comment on camera, but did say King plans to plead not guilty at his arraignment, which is scheduled for February 23rd.
Now, let's talk about that courtroom moment, because this is where everything feels heavier. When Keon King returned to court, the room wasn't just filled with lawyers and legal language. It was filled with anticipation. Imagine being Kada's family, sitting there knowing that this might finally be the day where the system speaks clearly. The judge reviewed the evidence laid out, and when the words came down that Keon King was found guilty on all charges, it wasn't a dramatic outburst moment. It was quiet, heavy, and final in a way that makes your chest tighten. Justice doesn't always sound loud. Sometimes it sounds like silence and tears being held back. What really shifted the atmosphere, though, was the mention of newly released video evidence. And I want you to think about this with me. Video evidence isn't speculation. It isn't rumor. It's something visual, something concrete, something the court could see for themselves. According to what was presented, this footage helped establish movements, timing, and actions that align with what prosecutors have been building all along. For Kada's loved ones, this wasn't just proof. It was confirmation of what they already felt in their bones. As viewers, it makes you ask yourself how much truth can exist long before it's officially acknowledged. How many people suspected something was wrong long before the legal system caught up? And how difficult is it to sit with that knowledge while waiting for the process to unfold? This case has always been layered, and the courtroom update didn't simplify it. It deepened it. What stands out is how close Keon King was to Kada's world. Not a random encounter, not someone passing through. Someone who had access, familiarity, and trust. And that's where the emotional weight really sets in. When danger comes from someone nearby, it forces everyone to re-examine their own lives. Who do you trust? Who do you let get close? Who knows your routines, your habits, your vulnerabilities? I want to hear from you here, because this part matters. When you heard that new video evidence was shown in court, did it make things feel clearer for you, or did it raise even more questions? Because for many people following this case, it did both. It clarified responsibility, but it also reopened the pain of knowing that this could have been prevented if things had gone differently. The prosecution painted a picture of control, planning, and intent. The defense tried to push back. but the evidence spoke louder than arguments. And when the judge delivered that guilty finding, it wasn't just about Keon King anymore. It was about Kada, about acknowledging that what happened to her was real, was violent, and was wrong. Yet even with a guilty verdict, there's no true closure. Kada doesn't come back. Her future doesn't restart. Her family still wakes up to a world without her. That's something verdicts can't fix. They can only name responsibility. And that's a hard truth we don't talk about enough. This is a point in the story where the tension doesn't disappear. It transforms. The mystery becomes accountability. The fear becomes grief. And the questions shift from what happened to why and how this could happen to someone so young, so full of life, and so close to home. Stay with me, because the final part of this story isn't just about court outcomes. It's about what this case forces all of us to confront.
New details revealed as the man charged with killing Kada Scott appears in court. Prosecutors showed videos and images from where Kada's body was found in October, prompting an emotional response from family members in attendance. We also heard from detectives about the tips that led them to Kada after a 2-week search. It is Monday afternoon. I'm Sarah Bloomquist.
And I'm Brian Taft. The big story on Action News today is that preliminary hearing for Keon King. The 21-year-old has been held without bail since his arrest October 15th. Kada Scott's disappearance, of course, and death made national headlines.
Action News reporter Taronda Thomas was in court for the hearing that lasted all day today. She's live now in Center City with what we learned and reaction just in from family members. Taronda.
Well, Sarah and Brian, the judge ruled that the murder case against Keon King will move forward. This after disturbing details and photos were revealed in court today. Kada Scott's father, Kevin Scott, seen leaving court just a short time ago. Her family filled the courtroom for the preliminary hearing, which lasted for over 4 hours. Several witnesses testified, including a co-worker of Scott's, who said she received a phone call shortly after arriving to work on October 4th of last year, and she seemed upset during that call, saying something to the effect of, "I can't believe you're calling me," and that she seemed scared and had tears in her eyes. Prosecutors revealed evidence that pointed to Keon King as the person who made that 43-second phone call. Investigators also revealed evidence that the two had been texting in a way that suggested they'd planned to meet up that evening. Scott disappeared that night. Her body was found on October 18th at the abandoned Ada Lewis Middle School. In court, several investigators testified about Keon King's cell phone records showing he was in the vicinity of Scott's job as well as the school where her body was found. They also showed surveillance video that showed two people at a recreation center near that school. Prosecutors allege that King parked a stolen car there with Scott's body inside for more than 30 hours. Surveillance video showed in court today shows two people removing something that appeared to be heavy from that car. Investigators testified about receiving tips that eventually led them to Scott's body, which was in a shallow grave about 3 or 4 inches deep. That's when the prosecution showed those disturbing photos, with the judge warning the family first and some of them opting to leave the courtroom. The photos were of Scott's body, which was in a fetal position and had suffered from decomposition. A coroner's report says the cause of death was a gunshot wound to the head. Scott's family was emotional during the hearing, some gasping and crying as the photos were shown. Their attorney spoke afterwards.
Today was an incredibly difficult day for them. The Kada Scott family is continuing to grieve. In fact, their grief is unimaginable, but so is their commitment for finding and maintaining accountability for this.
Now, Kada Scott's phone, iPad, and Apple Watch were never found, but investigators testified today that they used an old iPad to trace her devices by using her Apple ID that was on that old iPad and then tracing her location for those new devices. Attorneys for Keon King, meanwhile, opting and saying that the prosecution never showed any evidence connecting him to the actual crime. King did appear in court today, which should say he looked very different from the mugshots with his dreadlocks shaven off, and a judge has ordered him to return to court on February 23rd for an arraignment. We're live in Center City. Taronda Thomas, Channel 6 Action News. Sarah and Brian.
Okay, Taronda, thank you.
Now that the court has spoken, this case shifts from waiting to reckoning. And I want to slow this part down with you, because this is where people usually think the story ends. It doesn't. This is where the emotional weight really settles in. Kada Scott is no longer just a name in a headline or a case number tied to a guilty verdict. She was a daughter, a friend, A young woman with routines, plans, and people who expected to see her again. That reality doesn't change just because the judge made a ruling. When the verdict came down, reactions weren't loud celebrations. There were quiet tears, deep exhales, heads bowed. That tells you everything. Justice can exist, and the pain can still be unbearable at the same time. Her family didn't gain peace. They gained truth. And sometimes truth hurts just as much as the uncertainty. Think about the role of evidence here. That video shown in court wasn't just a legal tool. It was a replay of moments Kada never consented to being remembered by. For families, seeing that kind of evidence is re-traumatizing, but they endure it because they want accountability. That kind of strength doesn't get talked about enough. And then there's the part that stays uncomfortable. Keon King wasn't a stranger lurking in the shadows. He was close enough to know Kada's world, close enough to move without raising alarms. That detail forces an uncomfortable mirror on all of us. We want danger to look obvious. We want villains to announce themselves. But cases like this remind us that harm often comes wrapped in familiarity. I want to pause here and really ask you to sit with that. How many times have we ignored a gut feeling because the person involved felt familiar? How often do we talk ourselves out of discomfort because we don't want to believe someone we know could be capable of harm? Kada's story presses on that nerve. Even after a guilty finding, questions linger. Were there moments that could change the outcome? Were warning signs dismissed too easily? Did people around her truly understand the risk she was in? These aren't questions meant to blame. They're questions meant to learn. Because if we don't learn, we repeat patterns. This case also highlights how social media plays a role in modern true crime. Lives were spoken, opinions were formed in real time, and narratives spread before facts were confirmed. That can bring awareness, but it can also bring confusion. It makes you think about how truth competes with noise, and how easily stories can blur when emotions are high. So let me ask you this, and really think before you answer. What does justice actually look like in cases like Kada's? Is it a guilty verdict? Is it awareness? Is it prevention? Or is it all of these things working together? And how do we protect ourselves and the people we love in a world where danger doesn't always look dangerous? If Kada's story made you reflect, share your thoughts in the comments. Let's talk about it. And if you want to keep these conversations going, support the channel by liking this video, subscribing, and clicking the bell icon so you never miss an update here on Shadow Crime. Your engagement keeps these stories visible, and visibility matters more than ever.